Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. She pointed at me and shouted, "He's trespassing. Take him away!" Even though I was standing on the very ground my family had owned for decades. The calm lake and glowing mountains behind us didn't matter. Her voice turned the air. Heavy with conflict, she dangled a shiny key in her hand, twisting it like she owned the whole place. "This villa doesn't belong to you," she said with a smirk. Her son leaned against the fence, chewing on chips like it was a show he had paid for. And the police officer by the water? He didn't move, just kept watching, waiting, as if he already knew this drama was far from over. I stepped closer, my boots crunching against the gravel. "You think holding a key makes you the owner? That gate was built by my father before you even moved into this neighborhood." My voice stayed calm, but inside my chest burned. I could feel the weight of every time she had tried to push me off this land. She blocked the gate with her arms wide as if she was a queen guarding her castle. "This property falls under HOA authority now," she announced, her tone sharp and fake official. She even waved a paper in front of my face, a notice stamped with the HOA logo, but I knew better. That paper wasn't real. Her son laughed, stuffing another handful of snacks into his mouth. "Mom, just tell him to leave already. Why waste time?" His words stung, but not more than the fact that the cop still hadn't stepped in. Was he with her? Or was he waiting for me to slip? I clenched my fists but didn't move. That's when Karen leaned forward, whispering so only I could hear, "You're finished here. By tomorrow this villa is ours." Something inside me shifted. She didn't know who I was. She didn't know the years. I had spent fighting battles far worse than some HOA bully with a fake notice. I stared at her, then at the cop, and finally at the keys swinging in her hand. A chill ran down my spine, but it wasn't fear. It was the calm before the storm. "Be careful," I told her slowly, almost like a warning. "Because when the real owner shows up, you'll regret every word you just said." For the first time, her smirk twitched. She didn't know what was coming. The officer finally stepped forward, his boots thudding against the wooden dock, but instead of addressing her, his eyes locked on me. Karen tilted her head, smiling like she had already won. "See? Even the law is on my side," she said loudly, making sure her son could hear. I crossed my arms, refusing to give her the reaction she wanted. The officer cleared his throat, then asked me flatly, "Do you have proof this property belongs to you?" His tone wasn't hostile, but it was heavy enough to stir the quiet lake. Karen let out a laugh, almost triumphant, and waved that forged notice in the air like a trophy. "He doesn't. That's why he's stalling," she shouted. I reached into my bag, not rushing, and pulled out a weathered folder wrapped in plastic. Karen's grin faltered for a second, but she quickly masked it. "Don't fall for his tricks, officer," she snapped. "That paper is worthless," her son added. "Yeah, Dad already said we could take the place. Remember?" His careless tone almost made me laugh. They were weaving lies faster than they could keep track of. The cop glanced between us, tension rising with every second. I opened the folder slowly and revealed the deed, signed by my father, notarized by the state. The officer's brows lifted slightly. Karen's voice cracked as she yelled, "This doesn't mean anything. HOA rules override private papers now." "He's lying!" She lunged forward and tried snatching the deed from my hand, but I pulled back just in time. Her nails scraped the edge of the folder, leaving a white line across the cover. "Careful," I said quietly, almost like a warning again. "If you rip this, you'll be destroying state property." The words hit her harder than I expected, and the officer froze, his eyes narrowing at me. Karen stammered, "What do you mean, state property?" I took a breath, letting the silence stretch. Her son looked confused, shifting on his feet, the chips now forgotten. "I mean," I said firmly, looking her dead in the eye, "this land isn't just private. It's protected under federal grant. My family didn't just buy it, we were entrusted with it. And I'm not just another homeowner you can bully." Karen's smile slipped completely. For the first time, she took a small step back. The officer's jaw tightened, as if he realized the situation had shifted. But instead of calming down, she doubled her voice, screaming, "He's bluffing! Call back up now!" She grabbed her phone, fingers trembling, but I noticed the sweat on her forehead. She wasn't as confident as she pretended to be. I leaned forward just enough so only she could hear. "Keep calling, Karen. The more people show up, the more witnesses you'll have when this all blows up in your face." Her hand froze mid-dial. For the first time, the queen of fake authority looked cornered. Karen's voice cracked as she barked into her phone, pacing in small circles like a cornered animal. Yes, send more officers right now. He's trespassing. He's dangerous, Her words broke when she realized the cop standing by the dock hadn't moved. He was still watching me, like he was waiting to hear what I'd say next. Her son shifted nervously, his chip bag crinkling in his hand. Mom, maybe we should just... He started, but she silenced him with a sharp glare. I set the folder carefully on the hood of my truck, my hands steady. Karen, let me explain this slowly, I said, lowering my tone so it carried across the still air. That key you're swinging around? It doesn't unlock anything inside. It's a copy you had made after trespassing into the maintenance shed. I have the footage. Her head snapped toward me, her smile gone. You're lying. I never... She stopped mid-sentence because she could see it in my eyes. I wasn't bluffing. The officer raised his chin slightly. Footage? He asked. I nodded. Every inch of this villa and dock is under surveillance. The cameras are live, stored on a secure server. Would you like to see her breaking in? I asked calmly. Karen's hand froze around her phone. For a split second, I thought she'd drop it. Her son's face turned pale. Mom, is that true? He whispered. Shut up, she snapped. But the crack in her voice betrayed her. She turned to the officer, trying to recover. Don't listen to him. He's fabricating evidence. I've seen his type before. Military liars who think they can scare us with fancy words. Her insult rolled off me like rain. In fact, it gave me the opening I needed. I stepped closer, letting my shadow fall across the gate. You're right about one thing, I said evenly. I did serve. And unlike you, I know what authority really looks like. I don't need fake papers and empty threats to prove I belong here. Karen's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but she refused to back down. She shoved her phone toward the officer. Do something. Arrest him before he hurts us. She shrieked. But the officer didn't reach for me. Instead, he asked her the simplest question of all. Ma'am, can you show me your ownership documents? Her face drained of color. She stammered, looking at her son, then back at the cop. We have the HOA approval. But her words collapsed under the weight of silence. Even her son looked away, embarrassed. I crossed my arms. You wanted this to be public, Karen. Fine, let's make it public. I'll call the real sheriff, and we'll settle this tonight. Her phone slipped in her hand. She tried to hide her panic, but the battle she started was about to turn against her. For the first time, the mountain air didn't feel heavy on my chest. It felt like justice was finally catching up to her. Karen's phone buzzed before she could hang up, and she put it on speaker so everyone could hear. A sharp male voice cut through. This is Officer Daniels. We received your call, ma'am. Backup is on the way. Her lips curled into a wicked smile, and she looked at me like she had already won.
Hear that?
Real law enforcement is coming. You won't be able to bluff your way out this time. Her son smirked too, whispering finally, but the cop standing at the dock raised his brow and stepped closer. Back up, that's strange. I didn't call anyone, he said. His voice was low, almost suspicious. Karen waved him off, her confidence returning. Doesn't matter who called. What matters is he'll be gone in handcuffs soon. She jabbed a finger toward me like a judge delivering a sentence. I didn't flinch. Instead, I pulled my phone from my pocket, tapped the screen, and held it up for all of them to see. A live feed of the villa's security cameras played, clear as day. It showed Karen sneaking into the side shed 2 nights ago, fumbling with lock cutters and pocketing a shiny object, the same object she was now waving around as if it was proof of ownership. Her son gasped, his face draining of color. Mom, you really did that? He whispered. Karen's face went red, then pale, then red again. That footage is fake. He's manipulating it, she screamed, her voice cracking with desperation. The officer studied the video carefully, his jaw tight. That looks pretty real to me, he said. Karen lunged forward like she could snatch the phone from my hand, but I slipped it back in my pocket before she touched it. The more you scream, I told her quietly, the more you prove you're guilty. Her hands trembled, and for the first time she took a step back instead of forward. But then in a wild act of defiance, she shouted into her phone, Officer Daniels, arrest him the second you arrive. He's armed and dangerous. That lie froze the air. The dock officer snapped his head toward her. Ma'am, that's a serious accusation. You'd better have proof. Karen didn't back down. She leaned into the lie. He threatened us. He's hiding a weapon in his truck, she yelled. Her son looked terrified now, glancing at me and then back at his mother. Mom, stop. Don't. But she cut him off with a hiss. Do you want to lose everything? Keep quiet. I let the silence drag for a moment, then walked to my truck, unlocked the back, and pulled out a worn duffel bag. Karen's eyes lit up like she thought she'd caught me. But when I unzipped it, the only things inside were folded flags, service medals, and a framed photo of my unit. I held the picture high so everyone could see. This, I said firmly, is the only thing I keep locked up. Not weapons, memories, sacrifices, and a promise that no one takes my family's land without a fight. The officer's posture shifted. Respect flickered in his eyes. Karen's smirk crumbled completely. And for the first time, she had no words. The fake officers froze when the doc cop's radio crackled back with a sharp reply. Copy that, Unit 12. Multiple deputies en route. Hold position. The words hung in the air like a storm about to break. Karen's face twisted in panic. She waved her arms frantically at the two imposters. Don't just stand there, do your job. Arrest him now before they get here. But the taller man took a cautious step back, his bravado gone. This isn't what we signed up for, he muttered to his partner. The shorter one tugged at his sleeve. We need to leave. Right now. Karen spun on them, her voice rising to a scream. Leave? After everything I paid you for? You can't just... The dock officer cut her off, his voice like steel. Paid them? Did you just admit that, ma'am? His hand rested firmly on his holster now. Karen's mouth snapped shut. But it was too late, the words had already slipped. Her son buried his face in his hands, whispering under his breath, This is bad. This is really bad. I stepped forward, my tone calm but sharp enough to slice the silence. Karen, you tried to frame me with forged notices, fake keys, and now hired actors pretending to be police. Do you realize what that means? She glared at me, her chest heaving, but her eyes flicked nervously toward the SUV. I reached into my folder again, pulling out another sheet, this one embossed with a seal. What you don't know, I continued, is that every attempt you've made has been documented. And this? I held the paper up so the officer could see. This is a federal injunction protecting this land. Signed last year. You never stood a chance. The dock officer's eyes widened as he scanned it, his expression changing from suspicion to certainty. He's telling the truth, he said firmly. Karen stumbled back a step, shaking her head. No, that can't be. HOA rules. HOA rules are above everything. Her words sounded less like confidence now and more like desperation. Her son finally snapped. Mom, stop. Just stop already. You're embarrassing both of us. His voice cracked with shame. Karen whirled on him, her face red with fury. I'm doing this for you. For us, don't you get it? This land was wasted on him. The shorter fake officer muttered something and bolted toward the SUV. His partner cursed, under his breath, and followed, their boots slamming against gravel. Karen screamed after them, Cowards! Don't leave me here. But the SUV roared back to life and tore off up the hill, leaving her standing alone at the gate. The dock officer's hand was steady on his radio. Dispatch, suspects fleeing in a black SUV, license plate incoming. He rattled off the details quickly, then turned his eyes back to Karen. She was shaking now, her phone still clutched in her hand like a useless weapon. I looked at her one last time and said quietly, This isn't just about land anymore. It's about the lies you thought would never catch up to you. And in that moment, the queen of fake authority had nothing left to say. The sound of tires crunching over gravel echoed before anyone spoke again. A black SUV rolled down the hill, its headlights cutting across the lake's surface. Karen straightened instantly, her smirk returning as if life had been poured back into her veins. That's them, she whispered to her son, then shouted at me, Your little show ends tonight. Her boy looked nervous, but he still clung to her side, waiting for the cavalry. The SUV stopped near the dock and two men in plain black uniforms stepped out. They didn't wear county badges, only generic patches stitched onto their sleeves. Karen rushed forward, waving frantically. Over here. He's the intruder. Arrest him now, she cried. The dock officer narrowed his eyes, his hand inching toward his belt. What unit are you with? He demanded. The taller man smirked. Special HOA enforcement. Ma'am called us in. His words didn't sit right. HOA enforcement wasn't law, it was intimidation dressed in cheap authority. I stood my ground, letting the silence speak. Karen clapped her hands together, delighted. Finally, someone who knows how to handle people like him. The officer by the dock barked sharply. That's not a recognized department. Identify yourselves properly. The two men exchanged a glance but didn't answer. Instead, they started walking toward me. Karen grinned wide, pointing like she was directing soldiers. Don't waste time. Put him in cuffs. I didn't move. Instead, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small leather wallet. I flipped it open and the dull gold of a federal badge caught the fading light. Karen froze mid-cheer. Her son's jaw dropped. The officer near the dock stepped back in shock, whispering, "Sir?" "These men," I said calmly, pointing toward the supposed HOA enforcers, "are impersonating law officers. That's a felony." My voice was steady, but it carried enough force to stop them mid-step. Karen's face went white. That's fake," she stammered, her finger trembling as she pointed at my badge. "He's tricking you." "Don't believe him." The taller fake cop scoffed. "Doesn't matter. You don't scare us." But his partner shifted uneasily, his confidence cracking under the weight of silence. The dock officer placed his hand firmly on his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. We've got a possible case of impersonation, requesting immediate backup." Karen panicked, shouting over him. No, don't call anyone else." "He's lying," her voice screeched, echoing across the lake. Her son pulled on her sleeve, whispering, "Mom, stop please, this is going too far." But Karen shook him off, her eyes wild. "They'll believe me. They always do," she muttered almost to herself. But this time no one was nodding with her. No one was laughing. I took one step forward, holding her gaze. "Karen, the more you fight this, the harder the fall. You've crossed a line you can't erase." And for the first time, she looked like she understood it. The wail of sirens cut through the mountain air before Karen could speak again. Red and blue lights reflected across the calm surface of the lake, growing brighter with every passing second. Karen's face went pale, her fingers tightening around the useless key in her hand. "No, this isn't happening," she whispered almost to herself. Her son stepped away from her, his arms crossed, no longer willing to stand at her side. Two sheriff vehicles skidded to a halt near the villa. Uniformed deputies stepped out quickly, hands resting on their belts, eyes scanning the scene. The dock officer waved them over and spoke fast. "We've got one female suspect. Multiple charges possible, false reports, impersonation involvement, harassment, property interference." His voice was clear, firm, leaving no doubt about who the problem was. Karen raised her hands like she was the victim. "Wait, you don't understand. He's the criminal here, not me." She pointed at me wildly, her voice cracking. "He forged those papers, he staged those videos." Her desperate rant was cut short when one of the deputies held up a hand. "Ma'am, we'll need to verify everything. Step aside." I handed over the deed, the injunction, and my ID. The deputies studied each document carefully, their expressions shifting from doubt to recognition. One of them looked up at me with respect in his eyes. "You weren't kidding. This is federal protection." He turned to Karen, his jaw tight. "Ma'am, you've made some very serious false claims." Karen's face twisted, her last wall of pride crumbling. No, this isn't fair," she screamed, stomping her foot like a child denied candy. "You can't just believe him. I'm the HOA president, I make the rules here." Her voice echoed off the mountains, but the only response was silence and the quiet buzz of radios. Her son shook his head, tears forming in his eyes. "Mom, please, stop before it gets worse." But she wasn't listening. She lunged toward me, her fingers outstretched like she could tear the badge from my hand. A deputy intercepted her, grabbing her wrists and pulling them behind her back. She screamed, twisted, and cursed, but the cuffs clicked shut with finality. The lake breeze picked up, carrying her words away into the night. I stood still, my hands at my sides, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, the land felt quiet again, like it was mine and mine alone. The deputies led Karen toward the cruiser, her red dress glowing under the flashing lights. Her son trailed behind, silent, his eyes fixed on the ground. I took one deep breath, then looked at the officer who had stood by me from the start. He nodded once, slow and steady, a gesture of respect, and in that small moment, I knew the fight wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every person who had ever been told they didn't belong on their own land. The cruiser door slammed shut, muffling Karen's screams as the deputies secured her inside. The sirens flared to life again, their echo fading as the convoy rolled back down the mountain road. For the first time that night, the silence wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. The lake shimmered under the moonlight, untouched by the chaos Karen had tried to bring here. Her son lingered near the gate, his shoulders slumped. He finally looked at me, shame written all over his face. "I didn't know she'd go this far," he muttered. "I just thought she wanted control." I studied him for a moment, then gave a slow nod. "Control isn't worth destroying people over. Learn from this, or you'll end up exactly where she is." He didn't argue. He just turned and walked down the gravel path, disappearing into the night. The dock officer approached me one last time. "You handled yourself well," he said, his tone softer now. "Most people would have snapped under that kind of pressure." I smiled faintly, tucking the deed and injunction back into my folder. She thought fear would win. But some things are bigger than fear. He gave me a curious look. "Like what?" I glanced out over the still waters, the mountains rising proud in the distance. "Like truth, like ownership, like the right to stand on your own ground without bowing to anyone's false authority." My voice carried, steady across the night air. The officer gave a final nod, then tipped his cap before heading back toward his unit. Soon, only the sound of crickets and the soft splash of water against the dock remained. I stood there for a long while, breathing in the cool night air, letting the weight of everything sink in. Karen had tried to break me with rules that weren't real, with threats that were hollow, and with power that was borrowed. But in the end, her empire of intimidation collapsed, with nothing more than a set of cuffs and the truth. As I walked back toward my cabin, each step felt lighter. The lights from the villa glowed behind me. No longer a cage of false authority, but just another house on the lake. My land, my peace, my home, finally safe. And in that quiet victory, one thought burned brighter than all the rest. You don't need to fight with fists when the truth itself is the sharpest weapon of all.